Good afternoon and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. Today we are joined by Healthmark Industries Special Projects Manager, Jahan Azizi. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, Healthmark Industries. Since 1969, Healthmark Industries has developed and marketed innovative solutions to aid healthcare facilities in the delivery of surgical instruments and other life-saving medical devices to patients. Healthmark Industries' mission is to continue to innovate, continue to support, and continue to serve the healthcare provider industry and support services that make it possible to deliver quality healthcare. So please visit hmark.com for more information. Just a quick reminder to mark your calendars for our HTM Mixer, which is being held at the Westin, Indianapolis from May the 2nd and 3rd. Now, our mixers are slightly modified, smaller, shorter duration and less crowded events that still provides valuable continuing education, networking and vendor engagement opportunities. So for more information and registration details, please visit htmmixer.com. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us here at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Let's kick off today's webinar by giving away one of our Webinar Wednesday 10th anniversary prizes. Today's prize is a $100 Amazon gift card. So using the questions feature on your dashboard, please let me know the answer to the following trivia question. The PGA Masters Golf Tournament is taking place this week. So which city and state host the event? I'll reveal the answer and our winner at the end of the webinar. We'll be wrapping up today's presentation with a live Q&A, so please submit your questions anytime using the questions feature on the webinar dashboard. Now, as I mentioned earlier, our presenter today is Jahan Azizi, and he will be discussing technologies that helped enhanced inspections. So Jahan, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Good, thank you, Linda. As Linda mentioned, this is Jahan Azizi. I'm a special project manager for healthcare, which is a getting your company. I'm a certified biomedical technician and also work at the University of Michigan for 28 years, work at Food and Drug Administration and work for a couple medical devices manufacturing. So what we're going to talk about today is technologies that can help enhance the safety of the patients overall. But again, Healthmark policy is to improve our customers and healthcare community with a high quality state-of-the-art medical devices. And basically what we're going to talk about is, as far as obviously this undisclosure, I'm an employee of Healthmark, again, a company. We involved in manufacture and distributing medical devices, and no compensation has been given to this. All opinions are mine as a presenter. But overall, these presentations reflect the approaches and opinion of individual presenter. And the sponsor is not intended to be used as a training guide. As always, you need to follow the IFU, manufacturer's IFU, the warning, the precaution, and make sure that devices are safe to use. So what we're going to talk about today is define the enhanced visual inspection. Going to review some standard and guidance that support borescopic inspection, discuss other inspection technologies that they require, identify solution for automation, and explain why the automation can assist in implementing a quality system or QSM. So I'm just going to start with the story of John Harris, which this happened in Methodist Hospital. Actually, it happened in 2009. John Harrison is a 63 years old oil industry sales manager in Mission, Texas. He had a surgery to repair his rotator cuff on his right shoulder. As you know, that the rotator cuff procedure is basically a minimal invasive procedure. The surgeon usually makes a couple of small incisions and uses a small camera and other tools to repair the rotator cuff. The surgeon enters the shoulder obviously with the arthroscopic. The arthroscopy allows the patient to see what's inside the joint, and basically if it needs repair or replacement or removal of some of the tissue, they do that. In general, minimally invasive surgery is supposed to be last pain, shorter or no hospital stay. Some of these are taking place at the outpatient clinics and require fewer complications. So that's what probably most of the people that they go for these minor surgery, they hear before they go that. But what happened with John, weeks following the surgery, his scar turned bright red, hot to touch, and oozed like a thick butter, basically. Alarmed his wife Laura, called the Methodist Hospital in Houston, and basically the doctor said that you need to come. So they made the 4-hour drive, 7-hour drive to the Houston. So this is the interesting part, is that after John caught the dangerous infection during his routine surgery, Harrison and his wife basically sued against Methodist Hospital and the medical device, which at the time, obviously this device was the Stryker. So, and even after that. So the rest of the story, what this relate to me and what we're doing now. And as if you have done any surgery or loved one had a surgery, there are a lot of ideas comes back that. So if, for example, on the consent form, that there's a lot of issue, even from infection to death, is kind of all part of consent. So when John had this bug in his shoulder, basically he blamed himself. One of the questions that did what the doctor asked me? Did I take care of myself? Did I take care of my wound? But to his luck, what happened? He was not the only patient that had similar issue. Indeed, he was one of the 7 other patients that had similar joint surgery at the Methodist Hospital, which acquired this dangerous bug. And unfortunately, one of them passed on. And when something like that happens, CDC gets involved. So basically, this is an outbreak that they need to look at that. When CDC came, took them a couple of weeks to basically go through all the process. And based on that CDC evaluation, they found 2 probable causes inside the arthroscopic shaver. This arthroscopic shaver, discussed a little later, that used to obviously shave the bone and tissue during the surgery. And also they found some other stuff, basically tissues and bones and stuff inside these cannula. So what happened in that, when CDC got involved, since this is a medical device, so they basically pushed it to FDA, their sister agency, to look into that a little more. So an FDA obviously sent a letter to all the hospitals, said that FDA became aware of in which tissue has remained inside this arthroscopic shaver. And obviously you need to look at your IFU and make sure that they are clean. So again, FDA said that report submitted to FDA suggests that the tissue retained was not evidenced with naked eye, and multiple manufacturers sent letters to their customers to look into that. That was in 2009, but it took several years. In 2015, March of 2015, FDA sent this guidance out that for the manufacturer and devices, that the cleaning instructions should include visual inspection on most of the cannulated item, including borescopic infection. Additionally, the visual inspection should identify acceptance or failure criteria. So if, for example, you see a little bit of rust, is that acceptable, or should you remove it? What you should do to it? For example, pitting, crack, and the stuff that FDA wanted to do that. So based on all those issues happen, why do we need enhanced inspection? We'll talk about various standard guidance support that. For example, AAMI ST 79, AAMI ST 91. We have the SGNA, the FDA has some guidance, and IFUs. You must follow the IFUs. That's the first thing. Joint Commission and CMS come in and look at that. Are you following the instruction for use? Are you following the all the requirement that you need to process this instrument? And obviously, on top of that, if, for example, the IFU doesn't exist or there's no standard, sometimes the publication by peer review publication, that if they mention that, for example, this group reviewed these devices and they found out that you need to do this activity for cleaning. And obviously, medical devices with lumen are not visibly clean with naked eyes. That's the issue we had with John Harrison, that arthroscopic shaver. And obviously, our patient demands a clean, functional, and sterile medical devices. So what FDA say that, for example, manufacturers need to validate the instrument, that if they can be easily cleaned, and user, you need to verify. Is one of those, is the verification falls under that for cleaning, sterilization, and obviously if there's consistent are being performed. So let's look at the visual. What does visual mean? The Merriam Dictionary said that is relating to our vision, is our sight, seen or visible. So basically the visual, we need to look at that. An FDA definition of macroscopic is referred to an evaluation of a substance through the use of an unaided sense, primary sight, smell, or taste of an individual. So every consumer in our society who exercise some judgment of the purchased food, cosmetic, and other consumable good when we go to purchasing them. So for example, following cleaning, the instrument must be macroscopically clean, which means free from visible dirt. So based on this, for example, when I go to a restaurant, this is a really nice set up napkin that was sitting there. At one glance, looks really good in this nice warm blanket and sitting there. But when you look at it a little, even from distance, you see that, wow, there's some stuff here. Just taking the camera and looking at it a little closer, you see, wow, what's going on? This is really happening in one of the restaurant I've been in. And then I looked at that and the fork, you see that there's some stuff in. So if this comes to the table, obviously you question the whole process in the restaurant, but at least you want it to be replaced. If you sit in with a couple other people, you don't want to ruin their dinner. But once you have something like that happen, what else is going on in the kitchen that you cannot see as a customer? So definition, again, optical inspection is using an unaided eye along with the conjunction of various aid, in this case for magnification. So we talked about IFU. So IFU is obviously the one that the manufacturer designed a device. They should be the most knowledgeable about how to process, how to operate it, and moving forward. So here that we see that, for example, a striker shaver, that is said that visually inspect the handpiece, including all the internal surfaces for remaining soil, use an endoscopic camera or endoscope if necessary to see the inner surface of the lumen. So pay attention to that, endoscope and endoscopic. Then the other one is that Artrax, the same thing. It said that it is recommended that the cannulation be inspected with an illuminated or magnifying scope to ensure that all debris are removed. So when Stryker and Artex were talking about endoscope, it was literally that you take one of your tower, video tower, in your operating room or medical procedure unit to take one of the endoscope, usually 2.7 to 3 mil, to look inside those shaver. So when we did receive a letter from FDA, we really had to go borrow one of these tower, which is about, as you know, $250,000 to do that. And now we couldn't bring it down to SPD. We had to take our trays down to the up in the OR and try to do that. So these are patient-ready trays that within them had that arthroscopic shaver. So we talked about arthroscopic shaver, MIS, minimally invasive procedure. So this is that shaver that were used on that patient, similar model and number. And basically what they work for those that are not familiar with that. So the shaver, which is a high-speed drill, get attached to the machine, which is basically power out this high-speed drill. And then the surgeons select various, these are high-speed razor that actually go into the joint and remove the debris inside the joint. So looking at that, one of those shaver insiders, we received a brand new one in January 3rd, and this is what it looked like new. And what happened after processing in 3 weeks, that we see some rust and some other debris inside that. And these are obviously following the manufacturer's IFU. So Linda, we're going to have a poll question. We have 3 polls throughout this thing. We're trying to make this a little more interactive. So this is poll number 1, Linda. See if you want to poll.
Okay. Yep, I've just launched it, Jahan. So it's, what arthroscopic shavers do you have? Stryker, Arthrex, Smith & Nephew, ConMed, or Karl Storz? And I'll just give you a minute to cast your votes.
Yeah, thank you, Lorna. We're trying to find out that which one do you have, and you'll be surprised that they all are not. The IFUs are not the same. The devices should be identical. Good.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and close it. I'm going to share. So you've got 45% for Stryker, 45% for Arthrex, and 9% for Karl Storz, and 0% for both Smith & Nephew and ConMed.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So the 9% or the 90% are okay. The 9%, there's some issue. As I mentioned, that the shavers are basically substantially equivalent. What it means that you obviously have this high-speed drill, and then what you do at this end, you attach that disposable, and then there's an on-off button here that you basically send the debris and whatever fluid comes out to the wall suction. So they call it substantial equivalence. So when you go through that process, what does that mean in our case is that if, for example, Stryker and Arthrex in their IFU said that you need to do this, it makes sense for other one to do that. I was trying to find out all other arthroscopic shaver manufacturer, but some of them you have to have an account, some of them you need to send an email to receive their IFU. But just make sure that in the IFU that it said that you need to look inside it, because these are kind of difficult at some point, I say impossible to clean, because you have all these nooks and crannies. And then I was looking at one of them, I think was ConMed, they say that use a brush. And they don't say, for example, what size of brush that you need to use on this. If you look at this, you see that there are different different sizes here, that one probably need a huge brush. As you go down, you need a smaller brush. And moreover, on this one, that no brushes allow you to go past this and go around. So you need a special brush to actually clean around this area. Otherwise, the debris get in here, then could contaminate somebody. As I said, from even the Stryker and Arthrex, their IFU, they've modified them in 2011 and 2012 based on what happened to John Harrison. There were no borescope available in the market, so we had to use endoscope tower to basically inspect them. From that point on, we worked with the University of Michigan with a couple manufacturers, and then the first one was a fiber optic in 2009. Didn't have a chips, basically. It was fiber optic, the camera was eyepiece, and then basically the light would come here. Then the picture would get here, and you would see something, but it was really hard to detect what it was. And obviously with fiber optic, they're really fragile, low picture quality, and it wasn't good. But over the past decade, the borescope technology has improved a lot. So I'm hoping that other manufacturers of anything with lumen really need to go back and modify that, incorporate the borescope technology in inspecting those. For example, these are some borescope in the market. Here you have a Steras that you have different length of wires. We have Healthmarks, and here we have another one from Claris that basically gives you more flexibility of changing catheter if you need different sizes. For example, some of the shavers, you need a 60 centimeter line versus, for example, endoscope, you may need 110 centimeter or even 210 centimeter line to go through the whole process of the endoscope. So these are all available, and there are many choices for really tiny, less than 1 millimeter diameter versus, higher quality, 2 millimeter or so forth. So that was, we talked about basically the issue that came up with the shavers. But when I was doing a study for FDA at University of Michigan, we realized that really it wasn't just arthroscopic shaver with issues. Anything that has a lumen has the potential of getting dirty inside it and not be able to clean. For example, one of the things that as Biomed does, we like to look under the hood. So this is a really nice endoscope. And then when you take the shield off, this is what you see inside it. And then you take a little more, for example, here under the knobs, you see that you have all these angles, wires going out, some going from which this patient, and this is, say, for example, the machine and umbilical cord. You see that, for example, the fluid comes from here, goes to this area, and then through this 90-degree angle, goes back to this and to the machine. And for example, the suction goes to the wall suction, or if you attach the water or air comes from this and goes to the patient. So it's a nice technology versus, if you don't have to have open surgery to look inside. This does help a lot. But as you see, that is not an easy to clean device. And what happened when you look at them, a little bit older one, you see that they start getting damaged, and it's difficult to really send a brush in because you have all these angles that the brushing, it makes it difficult. So for example, here's, you see on the top that this is a nice, clean, new endoscope, and there's no issue with it. But at the bottom, with a similar area, you see that there are a lot of issues with this endoscope. And here another one, the same on top, good versus damaged endoscope. These damages, for example, the kink, they are from that inside tubing that you do not see it from outside. So when I look at that, for example, come back to this endoscope, I would not be able to see the damages here because the damages are usually on these Teflon tubing, and then that plastic, the other shield, masks that Teflon tubing, and you won't be able to see it. So it's important that you be able to look inside the lumens and see what's going on. So again, we started this in 2009. In 2012, that is a presentation for FDA and AMI and a couple hundred device manufacturer. And this Joe Eaton that works with public integrity, he published this, that as part of the study that I did, it wasn't just a shaver, but when we looked at 350 suction tips, we found out 90% of those actually were not clean, were not patient ready. So this is a problem that really with anything with lumen that you cannot see with naked eyes could happen. Then again, we published another study in August of 2012 that we call it uphill grime, that was an AOR and journal. So, and again, in 2015 said that obviously there are some manufacturers, IFU, that talks about that using some kind of endoscope or inspection when that. So you're hoping that with all those issues and all those information in the public domain, that people actually take the correct steps to do that. But here in Michigan, not far from where we at, in August 25 of 2016, we had again Detroit Medical Center, which have several hospitals and several clinics in the area, that they found dirty missing instrument, which was a huge issue in this area. And the CMS got involved, and they put them under obviously watch for 6 months to make sure that they solve the problem. Again, another example of that not doing the right thing, that here we have a jury or the company to pay $6.6 million for endoscope. That was against, obviously, Olympus, because they found out that the devices cause injury and death to the patient. So that was, the incident happened in 2010, but it took that many years to settle. So just recently, in October 17, 2023, another hospital in Kansas, I'm bringing these up because these are in public domain. So that was actually in the news, that was talking about in Kansas City Hospital, that they found out that there were rusty, broken instrument during the surgery. I'm sure you're familiar with ACRI ECRI, that they usually publish the top 10 technology hazards a year, and just basically go through the process. So in the past 10 or 12 years, every year there was something related to surgical instrument that was issued. For example, 2010 was contamination of flexible endoscope. We will talk about surgical fire, but you see a couple surgical fire here, cross-contamination of endoscope again. Here we have cross-contamination of flexible endoscope, inadequate reprocessing. So if you look the ACRI for the past, since 2010, you see something. The only time we didn't have anything on this issue, it was really mostly related to the pandemic, the corona issue. So for example, on this one in 2024, again, inadequate and erroneous device cleaning instruction. For example, in this case, they're talking about, for example, endoscope. You could have 140 steps to clean an endoscope. So the problem looks like is not going away. And what can we do to look at that? Again, when you're looking at the endoscope, you see this issue. So one of the things that we had on this one is you look at that and you see there are some small items in a kind of a clean endoscope. The bottom ones, as I mentioned, they're really pronounced. So one of the things happened that as the hospital started using borescope and looking at that, said that, what am I looking at? What is a good scope? What is a bad scope? So we partnered with this company and we created a watchdog AI Endo, which basically what it does, automatically detect, label, count all the issue inside the endoscope. It overcomes the guesswork and unreliability of inspection. What it does, it keeps a record of all the pictures and videos for the reference future and stores them in the cloud version and notify the manager and do that. So this means that high level of reliable, create sameness. If Joe or Jill or Jack does it, is all the same, and keep inspection time to last. What is this? Is a basically artificial intelligence, and what it does is act as 1/30 of a second. So that's 4.5 times faster than a human eyes. So basically identify scratches, peeling, crimps, droplet, and then keep that running records. And what it does is send the email simultaneously to the manager and whoever is doing that to make sure what it is. This is just a little clip of what the AI detects. So if you look at that at the speed that I'm going, so it's going to look at that. It said that P for peeling, scratches, droplet, and then again peeling. And what it does at the end of this, it goes back and get a report. So I'm going to show it one more time, that way you can see that what's going on. So you see all the area that scratches, droplet, and goes all the way through. And then when you finish in a minute or so, it sends a report. And in the report, it said that, for example, how many scratches you had, how many peeling you had, and is show actually where they are in the endoscope. So it's a little closer picture of it. And this email is as a 10 picture comes in and get attached to a PDF, sent email to as many people as you want, and then you can take a look at that. So Linda, we're going to take our second poll question.
Okay, the second question is, are you using magnification borescope to check newly purchased instruments or after major repairs? And we want a yes or a no for that. So I'll give you a couple of seconds.
And on this one is that we found out that when you, as a biomed, we always do the income inspection to see if they meet all the requirements. But in this portion of them, an endoscope is at $35,000, $40,000 a piece, that when you receive them or when they come back from repair, do they really did what they're supposed to do? So I don't know, Linda, if you got the answer.
Yep, I'm going to close that and share it. And you have got yes, 27%, and no, 73%.
Okay. So for the 27%, that's great, but for the 73%, is really problematic because during the study that I did for FDA, I looked inside all the devices that we received. For example, the shavers that we received, we found some actually rusting right from the brand new devices. The suction tips, we had a lot of issue with them as well. The workmanship on those were really low. And part of it is that because they're not $10,000 or $20,000 items, so they don't make them as well. But the issue was that you look at that. We have one hospital that implemented our AI software, and they were sending the endoscope for repair. When they receive them back, they just actually implemented the watchdog. And when they looked inside them, they were surprised that the repair was not adequate. So they actually had to send all those back to repair. There really was poor workmanship on the endoscope repair. So you'd be surprised what you send out and what you receive, and the bill that you get, did they really do their job? On that ACRI's report, you saw a few years that they mentioned surgical fire. So I'm sure you're familiar with this monopolar cord, that they're supposed to be disposable. That means that you only can process them 20, 25 times. And after that, you need to pitch them. But really, it's kind of difficult to keep track of them, how many times you process these. And I was involved in a couple of these that they actually got cut during the cases. So here you see that it burned. And I'm going to show you a couple FDA mod database. It said that monopolar cord, there were 4 additional reports just in 2020 that was issued with starting surgical fire. So what happened is that the cord, obviously this end of it is heavy. Over time, the inside this start breaking, the wires start breaking. At some point, you don't have enough wire. So in this case, what happened is that the surgeon usually set the dial for 25 or 30 joules. However, that if you have some issue with these wires, that maybe some of the electricity not go return to the machine. So the surgeon asked to increase the wattage to 35, 40, and 45. At the 45 level, this is what happened. So the energy basically broke this off, and the cord fell to the ground, and this was obviously attached to the machine. So this is one of the one that happened. And if you look at mod database, you see a lot more similar issue. And then obviously you have bipolar cord that surgeon was cauterizing the tongue and obviously burned the patient's lips. You have that electric arc in oxygen-rich environment. Anything above 30% electric arc is not a good thing. And then it's obviously at the small intestine, surgeon inspected the hook. Obviously, they found out something happened. And again, on robotic endorist, there's some issues reported in 2019 that basically a permanent cautery hook damaged the bowel of the patient. So unlike the shavers and endoscope, the IFU on this cord is said that obviously you need to the cord electrical continuity is regularly tested with an ohm meter, as well as frequency inspection for the cord insulation. So the IFU say that you need to look at that, but we know that there are not many ohm meter in the SPD department. So here again on that warning, it is possible that it will overheat and either ignite itself or ignite nearby material, and inherently dangerous to both the patient and the operating room personnel. So these are basically right off from the monopolar and bipolar quartz IFU. So let's look at the last poll, poll number 3, see what we get on here.
Okie dokie. Can HTM play a role with making surgical instruments reprocessing? And we'd like a yes or a no.
Yeah, and this is kind of important because working as a biomed for 30 years or so at the hospital, that we all have our own silo, but sometimes really patient safety requires everybody's collaboration. In this case, for example, we're talking about most of those courts asking about that user ohm meter. Do we know that how many ohm meter they have in SPD department, and how do they use them? Do they calibrate them? Do they need batteries or so forth? So if you have the answer, see what's going on.
Okay, got 100% yes.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So this is really good. I'm glad that at least if you're not doing, you're helping them. So based on that requirement IFU, we had a need to obviously check the continuity of those cords. So ohm meter was a little difficult looking at that, what's going on SPD with all the other technology going on. Basically, I was able to design this continuity tester. And it's basically, for those of you who are familiar, is basically a simple series circuit that has a battery and then a couple of resistors, and then complete the circuit when you have a good wire attached to it. So if this wire has any kind of high impedance, I mean there's breakage in the wire or the wires are not in good shape, it causes to not on. So green is good, no green is bad. So and here's the bipolar that you can use that. So any fault in any of these wires, do that. So that's basically a quick answer to the need that they have in SPD. So biomed can help. The other one is that really, as a biomed, we didn't get involved, is the installation of those insulated instruments. So anytime you have energy from ESU goes to any of these cautery, monopolar or bipolar, this is supposed to be coded. And then basically you want the energy to go here. And indeed, during the operation, surgeon do not see this port of that because obviously the light is shining to this area, and then based on that, perform the surgery. But there's a lot of report that actually patients' bowel and other organs are getting damaged because this portion, the surgeon cannot see, is causing the arc to come in and poke a hole in somebody's intestine. So here's an example that was caught on camera, basically, that the surgeon is doing procedure here, but there's an arc actually putting a hole in the bowel. And unfortunately, that when patient goes home, you don't even know. Again, part of the consent form, you're going to have some fever, you're going to have some of these patients, they may complain of fever, they get some antibiotic or what have you, but at some point they start basically getting worse, and at some point there's no return on that issue. So we have, for example, this high voltage that you can actually test for those issues that you have. So, and we found out that some of the monopolar and bipolar require different level of energy. So when you select one of these, you want to make sure that you have one that goes to say 1000 volt versus that, for example, something with a thick coat that you want more than 4000, 4200 volts to be able to detect fault in those insulation. The other thing that we've, on a rigid scope, obviously that you've been in the operating room, that you find out that this is basically the eyes of the surgeon inside the dark cavity of the patient, and they want to make sure that everything is good. I've been in cases just evaluating equipment, and then obviously when they look at this, the picture is not clear. And for surgeon, it's really difficult to look inside that. And this is, again, looking under the hood For this, you see the glass rod that in here, and then you have the fiber optic glasses going basically around it. And these over time, they start breaking, and the intensity of the light is not good. In the one way of looking at that, if you have 20% of the fibers damaged, usually the is not really as bright as supposed to be. So what we had, we repurposed one of these devices that we at least you can look at these in the SPD department and look at that. For example, here, this device that when you shine it here, you see that in that United States Air Force card that we have, you see that this corner is a damage. So instead of sending this to the operating room, that way the surgeon doesn't know what is going on here. Is there something wrong with the patient, or what's going on? They can actually receive a rigidoscope that is functioning. Again, here, for example, that rigidoscope, if you look at it a little more under the magnification, you see that there's some damages here. And obviously that damage caused the fiber optic to get bent and basically break. So you don't have as many fiber optics going to that. So these are all technologies that can help. And this is really a good one, even as a biomed, and you can buy them really online as well, is a 250 time magnification. It's basically a microscope that you can attach it to your laptop or your PC. Again, most of the IFU is talking about some kind of magnification that you can get that. For example, this particular one, you can use various items to do that. Also online, there are some magnification. For example, you have the 4.5x, 6.5, 8, and 13x that you can purchase, and I'm going to show you a couple times. So basically what you do, you attach it to that little eyepiece, you click it in there, and then you come back here, put it above the camera of your smartphone, and then see what you can see. So I'm going to go back to show those. So here, pretty straightforward. You take it, you attach it to that little piece, and then you clip that to the camera of your smartphone. And here you have a really nice, handy device that you can use for magnification. So that's what I had, Linda. If you want to go and see if there are any questions that we have from audience, I'd like to make this interactive and see what their feedbacks are and what we can do to have a communication.
Okay, great. Yes, I've got a few that come in. First one is, you mentioned the Stryker and Arthrex IFU was updated to include a borescope inspection. Why do other manufacturers of arthroscopic shavers not update their IFUs?
Well, actually, that's a really good question. It's really interesting that, as I mentioned, if you're familiar with substantially equivalent. So if you have a class 2 medical devices, and usually either you start from scratch or you kind of follow somebody else's, not copy it, but follow somebody else's technology. And then what you do in that case, you send to FDA, say that, for example, in this case, say, for example, your CONMAD, you say that my shaver, arthroscopic shaver, is substantially equivalent to R-Track and a Stryker. So basically, and what I would do, I would go, if I'm trying to get a 510K clearance for that device, I go online and I find out what Stryker and R-Trax had submitted to FDA on the public domain. And then I said that, yes, this function as this, does this, and so forth. So at the end of the day, that CONMAT shaver, or really anybody else, in this case, I know 9% had Karl Storz shavers, it should be substantially equivalent to the other one. So the main reason I think Stryker and later on R-Trax added to that IFU because Stryker was being sued because John Harrison's infection was as a result of Stryker shaver. So yes, if you ask me, they should all have same IFU. So not updating them, I think I'm kind of surprised that they're still operating like that without really being able to do that. So yes, we see a lot of IFUs, sorry, that do not include the inspection. For example, just while we're talking about the IFU not having something that require, as of today, the endoscopes, I showed a lot of pictures, the complexity of inside those, and the $6.6 million suit. And if you look at it, there's always something going on. And we have been, many hospitals looking inside the endoscope, and Corey Offset has done a lot of research and studies on these. The endoscopes should and must have doing internal inspection. But as of today in their IFU do not. Really anything else with lumen that you cannot see with naked eye from outside, how can you inspect it? I mean, they say that inspect your device, but to the detail of that, how do you inspect it? I think that's a question that probably it should be asking me. So that if I had this college Stewart team, say that if your device is substantially equivalent to a Stryker and Artrax, why don't your IFU indicates that I need to look inside the shaver? Hopefully they don't get the same issue as the Methodist Hospital in Houston. You ended up in the front page and CDC comes shut down. So sometimes I think I brought that example of that. Hopefully we learn from other people's misfortune to look at that. For in our case, for example, DMC, that the issue that they had for 6 months, they were not getting paid basically from CMS or put a freeze on it till they correct their issues. Those are all basically tip of the iceberg that we should pay attention to. Hopefully I answered that question.
Very well, Jahan. Another question here is why are more injuries not reported if cannulated devices cannot be processed effectively?
Yes, that's always that I ask that question myself too. Why aren't we getting that? Actually, when I present or we had the study, we get a lot of that question. If this is bad, even from FDA, why aren't we seeing more? It was interesting that when John Harris said that at first he blamed himself, that he didn't take care of himself. And then even when we back to the hospital, I really give a lot of credit to Methodist Hospital that try to look at that as not being one-up. I think when it happens to me, Jahan, I go to do a procedure and then I get infected. I go back to my surgeon and I said that, well, I had this. They look at it, they gave me antibiotic and they send me. But unless you have a cluster or there was a death that somebody can pinpoint that this issue happened to that. So the question is it happening but not being reported? Or is it happening and just one-off, and then the hospital realize what's going on? And sometimes if you settle them outside the court, then obviously they do not become in public domain. So I wouldn't know about it. So I'm surprised that a lot more are not in public domain today, because if it happens to one place with a similar device, why aren't happening? Unless, again, hospital are doing a great job at processing them, or it's difficult to pinpoint the outcome of a patient, in particular to a surgical equipment. And you have to look at that when you go to a surgery, they give you a whole bunch of antibiotics. So that way, at least, you have some defense against anything comes into that. But if your immune is compromised, obviously, or antibiotic is not working on you, that would become an issue.
Okay, great. I've got another question here that's also in two parts. So, why do the issues with effectively processing surgical instruments remain such an intractable problem after all these years? And so, what is the best practice remedy to eliminate such issues?
So the processing effectively is interesting that when I was doing this study, I looked at that SPD department, for example, at the University of Michigan, where I worked at, they process about 40,000 surgical instruments daily. So when the tray comes in, for example, orthopedic case could use 8 to 12 trays. And some of these trays have many instruments on them. For example, some of us up to 100 different instruments on them. There are a lot of duplicates in them. So when you look at the volume that is going on, and say, for example, some of them that just take the shaver and look at that. So if your shaver, to effectively clean that, you need 4 different brushes. You need a brush for the tip of it. You need to go back, a special brush, as I showed from where they attach the disposable. And then you need a different size of brush for the different portion of it. So you have 4 brushes. And then if you have many of these, you have to look at that. So if you say that takes you 15 minutes to 20 minutes, and then you have tons of these, you don't have enough hands or manpower to be able to clean these. The other example of is, for example, endoscope. Endoscope, to clean it effectively, there's 140 steps that to look at that. If I try to clean an endoscope, it takes me at least an hour to do one. So if you have a place that does 100 or 200 endoscope procedure a day, just multiply that by hours. So you have 200 hours. How many staff do you have? Do you have enough time to adequately clean those? So the complexity of the surgical instrument causes that to basically be kind of impossible to clean them adequately, and still remain issue, as I mentioned, that you go back to ACRI that has been on the top 10 list. And top 10, that means there are a lot more that didn't make it, but these surgical instrument endoscope been making it one of the top 10 for the past 10, 15 years, and they're still on the news and happening. Really, the example of that, looking at that, we have some hospitals that, for example, on the endoscope, they inspect every endoscope and the end of procedure. So you want to find the name of those hospitals and look at that. And the same as that, do they really inspect them? We travel to many hospitals and do basically audit, we call it consultative practice review, CPR. And we look at that. There are some hospitals actually do pay attention to that. Look inside the lumen and make sure that they clean it and they follow the manufacturer IFU. They have a lot of other technology for automation and inspection of it. For example, with that watchdog artificial intelligence, that's been helping to speed up some of those processes. Hopefully I answered that question. It's a tough one because every hospital have a different, but at the end of the day, really you need to make sure that put enough resources in processing these instruments.
Perfect. Now, just before we wrap up, Jahan, I've got another question here. Have you got any top tips?
So we have some of the, again, make sure that you follow the IFUs, not just for effective cleaning verification, more so for passing the Joint Commission and CMS, because they are looking at those IFUs. And then if you really see something that it doesn't exist, bring it up. Again, for example, we found out that CMS and Joint Commission, sometimes if it's not in an IFU, in the peer-reviewed literature, they look at those and then make sure that is being adequately cleaned and processed. So yes, is good. But we've been seeing a lot of improvement, and just not being on the news, I think that's a good thing. But I think overall, we all need to be mindful that this is everybody's. As far as I said, with HTM helping the SPD department, I think that collaboration, it would be really helpful for patient safety.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jahan, for your time today and for such a great and informative presentation. I'd like to encourage everyone to visit today's sponsors' website, hmark.com. So thank you to Healthmark Industries. If you want to visit their website, you'll learn more about the products they provide for our industry. As promised, the answer to today's trivia question is Augusta here in Georgia. So congratulations to our winner, Troy Meeks in Iowa. Just a quick reminder, you can obtain your certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We will be back next week with another webinar and another 10th anniversary prize. So please visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and complimentary registration. So thank you once again for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.